The block style plugins module allows a developer or a themer to create form elements for regular content editors so that they can easily apply predefined styles to blocks. Perhaps a theme has various different styles that they can apply to blocks. The editor can now go in, choose those styles, and be on their way. So it's a little bit more work up front for the themers and developers, but it provides a much smoother editing experience for the day-to-day content editors. You can find some examples of how to create these plugins in the test directory. You can go to Test Modules, Block Style Plugins Test, and then see how the structure is for creating these plugins. So there are a handful here, and the block styles base class is what you want to extend. I know this might be a little intimidating if you're a themer that doesn't do a lot of PHP coding, but it's fairly straightforward. You can copy this, paste it into your theme, and be off to the races. There are two main methods that you want to override within your plugin. The first is default styles, and with this you just want to pass an array of whatever the default styles are. In our case, we're going to create a style called simple class. And then the second method is form elements. This is where you'll use Drupal 8's form API to actually create the form elements that will show up on the block configuration. So in this case, we have a simple class that is a text field. Give it a title, give it a description, and pass in the default value, which will come from up here. Otherwise, if someone's already configured it, it'll pull in the default value from their own configuration. The real power of the Block Styles Plugins module is that it allows themers to define what block styles should look like. So in our case, we've got a custom theme that we've created. It has an info file. For now, we're just going to extend the Bartik theme. We've got a library that's defined some CSS styles, and these CSS styles are block red, block yellow, and these are what are going to be applied through our plugin. Finally, there's a blockstyle.yaml file. This file allows the themer to declare the plugin. So the first thing you do is give the plugin a machine name. Give it a label. In our case, we're going to create an ugly background color style. And finally, tell it where the class is located. You can ignore this for right now. We're going to do some more with this later, so this is just commented out. If we now go to our source plugin block style ugly background color.php file, we want to make sure that our namespace is Drupal, whatever your theme name is, plugin block style. We're using these two use statements, which you can just copy and paste those. And finally, we name our class ugly background color that is extending the block style base. So again, here's our default styles. So we have a default style called ugly background. You can ignore this for right now. We'll come back to that. And here's our form elements method. So we're going to create a drop-down list, a select list, where someone can choose which color they want. So they have a select list, give it a title, we have some options. So in the event that we don't want to apply anything, we'll just leave default. But then they can choose a red, yellow, blue, or green, and it'll apply those specific classes. And again, you can ignore some of this, but this is all you need right now. So if we now go and look, I've got a custom block type that I set up here. If we edit the configuration for this block, you'll see now we have block styles, ugly background color, and we can choose red. And boom, we now have that applied. So if we inspect the HTML markup to this, we'll see that the block red class got applied. So if we edit again, we can set it back to default, and it goes away. So it's as simple as that. Right now, every single block has this option, right? So we can pass in a block's base plugin ID. In this case, it's the search form block. So by doing this, and I want to clear my cache, by doing this, now our plugin is confined only to the search form. So you'll notice it's no longer here, and it doesn't matter what block I go to, it's no longer showing up. So right now, the search is the only block which will have these new block styles. And this is great if, for example, you have a hero banner and you only want to have different style options for the hero banner, or you have any other sort of block that you really only want these styles to apply to that block, because it can be confusing for editors to have all these different style options and really they weren't designed for those different types of blocks. Now, as we look at this, we might see that, well, we applied this color, but the default search title now gets washed out. There's not decent contrast. So now maybe what we want to do is we want to come back to our form and we want to apply a title contrast. So we want to give this a default, which will be nothing. And we now want to add another form element called title contrast. This again will be a select list. The other thing that we're adding into this is a state visibility. So if the label is not checked and we're not going to be showing a title, there's no point in showing this field. That could be confusing. Or if someone's just using the default background color, they don't need to change this. So we don't want to offer this as an option. So now when I edit this block, I have a new option here. And because we put the visibility conditions, this won't show up if they're not even using a color. Or if they are using a color, but they're not displaying the title, it's not going to appear. And then if you really want to customize things, this is going a whole nother level. But you can override any other method that's provided by this base class. In our case, we want to actually manipulate the data that's being submitted. So ultimately we want to remove the title contrast altogether from any data, because remember that just because you're hiding something visibly, that form element is still being submitted. So if we want to just keep things neat and tidy, we can outright remove it. Do you need to do this? That's your call. But it's nice to have these options available. If you're trying to figure out what your base plugin ID name is, one easy way to do it is to create your theme name.theme and add in a preprocess block. And in this preprocess block, your variables array has a key called base plugin ID. So really, you should have a debugger set up and you can debug this and it'll figure it out that way. Otherwise, you can just print it. And so what you'll get, if you clear your cache again, is now every block will show you what their base plugin ID is. So if I wanted options on the branding block, I can now add those in. Clear your cache. And now I've got block styles options. Now one thing you might discover is that any custom block types, for example, the basic block type, all have a base plugin ID of block content. So you can actually add the block type's machine name into your include. In this case, if we edit the basic block, we can see a machine name of basic. And that can be added in. Now the other option is to do exclude. And exclude assumes that this style should show up everywhere except for these specific blocks. So by doing an exclude, you now have the ability to show these styles everywhere except for those specific blocks. And it's no longer there. So have fun with this. There's a lot of flexibility. Yes, it takes a little more time up front, but it does allow you to add a ton of ease for your actual editors that are doing stuff day to day and who really don't need to know anything about CSS classes.